"Looks like you've been stranded out here for quite a while," remarked the teenager, shielding his eyes from the blazing Colorado sunshine. Around 19 years old, he stood tall but lean, his rich brown skin glistening with perspiration, shirt, sleeves pushed up beyond his elbows, moisture beaded on his neck while his weathered work boots kicked up dust as he approached her disabled Porsche from the gravel roadside. Sienna Taylor pushed her designer sunglasses down, feeling more curious than concerned. "Long enough to develop a personal vendetta against every piece of desert vegetation within 5 miles, she replied, sweeping away a lock of hair from her heated face. The young man's laughter came easy and sincere. "Would it be all right if I checked things out?" She paused, considering her options. Stranded here, half an hour beyond Grand Junction, with 0 cell service and a destroyed rear tire, her choices were limited. When their eyes connected, she saw clarity and composure. He seemed unfazed by her luxury vehicle's emblem or her expensive leather shoes. Now scuffed from her attempt to walk toward the nearest service station, she gave a nod of approval. He set down his worn backpack, unzipped it carefully, and retrieved a pair of work gloves alongside a compact tool collection that appeared to have been treasured across generations. "You've got a replacement tire?" he inquired, already crouching beside the damaged wheel. "Should be in the trunk, I believe," she responded, stepping back to give him space. With practiced ease, he accessed the spare tire and began his work without further discussion. Sienna crossed her arms and rested against the vehicle, observing. In fascination. Something captivating emerged from his methodical approach, the way he eliminated unnecessary movements, how he secured bolts with natural rhythm, how sunlight danced across his forehead and illuminated the dark curls clinging to his temples. "Is this something you do regularly?" she finally asked. "From time to time," he answered without pausing. "His work. My uncle ran a garage in town and taught me everything before he died." The revelation left her speechless. After several more wrench turns, he rose and cleaned his hands on his denim. All finished, Sienna reached toward her purse. "Please let me—" He raised his palm, stepping backward. "That's not necessary, miss. I'm just grateful my path crossed yours today." Her hand froze midway into the leather wallet. "You don't want any payment?" "I have everything I need," he stated simply, shouldering his pack. She couldn't decide what amazed her more, his expertise or his declining compensation. "What should I call you?" "Jalen," he said. "Jalen Brooks." "Sienna," she offered somewhat hesitantly. "Taylor." He nodded once, smiled warmly, and began walking uphill, the setting sun stretching his silhouette across the fractured pavement. That evening, Sienna positioned herself on the balcony of her family's vacation residence, a contemporary ranch overlooking the Colorado River, with a glass of wine growing tepid in her grip and her phone buzzing persistently beside her. She ignored the notifications completely. Not her publicist, not her former partner, not the board members who had abandoned her just 3 weeks prior. Her mind kept drifting back to that young man inexplicably, the rough texture of his palms, the gentleness in his speech, the way he had simply walked away. She possessed everything material. At least, she had until 3 weeks ago when her own corporation voted to strip her from the CEO position her father had established for her. They labeled it a smooth transition. She recognized it as treachery, but none of them, not her financial backers, not the technology publications, understood what true grace looked like. Jalen had demonstrated that to her. 2 days passed before she found herself driving the identical route again, beyond the service station, past the stone formations, slowing at every shoulder, searching for that familiar figure. Absurd, she realized, yet something within her refused to let go. At the town's edge, just past a row of aged mailboxes and a drooping fence, she discovered him. Jalen was positioned on a ladder, driving nails into a deteriorating awning above an elderly woman's front porch. She parked, exited her car, and watched intently. He didn't spot her initially, not until the woman below called out, "You've got a visitor, sweetheart." Jalen turned, blinked with surprise, then offered a careful but interested smile. "Miss Taylor, I happen to be passing through," she said, delivering an obvious lie. He climbed down carefully. "Is everything working well with the tire?" "Perfectly," she replied. "But I never had the chance to thank you appropriately." He shrugged casually. "You already expressed your gratitude." She studied the porch, the nails, the bent ladder. "You do this frequently." "Sometimes folks require assistance," he explained, "and I enjoy working with my hands." They remained silent, wind moving past them, the fragrance of cedar and earth heavy in the atmosphere. Something meaningful passed between them, perhaps recognition, possibly respect. Sienna retrieved something small from her vehicle, a chilled water bottle, and their fingers made contact as she handed it over. She maintained eye contact. "Thank you," he said, twisting off the cap. "I don't suppose you enjoy coffee?" she ventured. He smiled, the first complete smile she'd witnessed from him. "Depends on who's extending the invitation." She returned the smile just slightly. "Someone who isn't finished exploring this road." The coffee shop occupied the town's edge, nestled between a pawnshop and an abandoned video store. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the aroma of fried potatoes and the gentle whir of a dusty overhead fan. Local residents hunched over chipped formica tables, sipping lukewarm coffee and exchanging stories without rush. Nobody paid attention to the woman in designer denim and a gray linen top who slipped into the corner booth, except the waitress, who arched an eyebrow at her polished footwear. Sienna smiled courteously, requested black coffee, and settled into the cracked crimson leather seating. Her gaze wandered to the window facing the street where she'd observed Jalen on a ladder 2 days earlier. The entrance bell chimed, and warm air followed a recognizable silhouette. Covered in sawdust, sleeves rolled up, hands darkened from labor, Jalen entered, acknowledging a man behind the counter. When he spotted her gaze, his body paused momentarily. Sienna stood, fingers lightly gripping the booth's back. "Hey," he offered a polite nod. "Didn't expect to encounter you again." She gestured toward the seat opposite hers. "Please, join me." Jalen hesitated, then sat slowly as though uncertain whether this was a prank or a trap. "I don't typically take coffee breaks with millionaires." "I don't usually pursue mechanics," she said with a smirk. He chuckled quietly. "I'm not really a mechanic." "You repair things," she said matter-of-factly. "You repaired something in me." Jalen tilted his head, unsure how to process that. "You were simply stranded, nothing more." "Sometimes being stranded poses greater danger than being damaged," she said softly. Their beverages arrived. He stirred sugar into his slowly, studying her through narrowed eyes. "So," he said after a moment, "what's your real reason for being here?" Sienna exhaled, glancing toward the window. "Honestly, I'm not certain. I was driving and ended up here again." He leaned back. "You're not accustomed to being curious without purpose, are you?" She met his stare. "I'm not used to someone walking away from me." Jalen looked down at his cup. "People like me don't usually get invited to stay." A silence settled between them, heavy but not bitter. The kind that acknowledges weight, rather, than trying to escape it. "I grew up in the type of household where nothing remained fixed," he said eventually. "Mom abandoned us. Dad drank heavily. My aunt held everything together with duct tape and prayers. So, I learned early, if something breaks and you can't replace it, you'd better learn to repair it." "And you never request help?" she asked. "I asked this guy," he said with a quiet smile, pointing to himself. "It's more affordable." She laughed, genuinely. It wasn't forced. He appreciated that. He glanced toward the church across the street. "What about you? What brings a woman of your status to a place like this?" Sienna looked away, searching for the right words. "I lost something," she said finally. "Maybe I never truly possessed it. I don't know. But when I exited that boardroom, for the final time, nobody would meet my eyes. They simply handed me a check and said, 'Thank you for your service,' like I'd been discharged from the military. Jalen's fingers tapped once on the table. Sometimes the exit is the building's best feature. She smiled at that observation. You have a way with words. I construct fences for a living. He shrugged. Gives you time to think. They sat quietly for a moment, the silence softer now, more comfortable. Then Sienna reached into her bag and withdrew a small leather-bound notebook, sliding it across the table. "What's this?" he asked. "An idea," she said. "A concept for something. I've been considering a type of community workshop, tools, mentorship, possibly training programs, but it requires someone who actually understands how to build things." Jalen didn't touch the notebook. "You hardly know me." "I know what you did when nobody was observing," she said. "That's more than I can say about most people in my world." He picked up the notebook, turned it over in his hands, opened it carefully. Blue ink, simple sketches, rough concepts, but the intention was evident. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this," he said. "I'm not sure I am either," she admitted. Their eyes met again. This time, neither looked away. "Okay," he said finally, voice low but confident. "Let's see where this path leads." The Carrington estate nestled in the Aspen foothills, far removed from the cracked sidewalks and rusted fences of Jalen's neighborhood. The main house towered 3 stories high, a fusion of steel and glass belonging on architectural magazine covers. Spotless windows reflected a sky too perfect to seem real. Every shrub had been sculpted, every flower bed maintained under contract. Jalen stood at the front entrance, hands buried in the pockets of a button-down shirt Sienna had insisted he borrow. Clean, pressed, unfamiliar, just like the world beyond those double doors. "Are you certain you want to do this?" she asked beside him, voice gentle. He shrugged without looking at her. "I'm only here for the food." She laughed softly, reached for the brass handle, and pushed the door open. Inside, warm light cascaded from chandeliers while laughter echoed off marble floors. Dozens of guests in tailored jackets and sequined gowns mingled around a piano, clinking glasses filled with expensive wine. A jazz trio played softly in the background, heads turned as they entered. Sienna's arm brushed his as they walked. "They're just people," she whispered. "No," he replied, eyes scanning the room. "They're your people." A man in his 50s approached with a practiced smile. "Sienna, finally, we thought you weren't coming." His eyes flicked briefly toward Jalen, then back to her. "And you brought a guest." "This is Jalen Brooks," she said firmly. "He's helping me with a new project." The man didn't extend his hand. "Charmed," he said flatly before returning to his drink. The room's warmth felt thinner now. Jalen stepped aside, allowing Sienna to float into conversations with the ease of someone born into the world of highball glasses and casual dominance. He drifted toward the room's edge, pausing by a long table lined with appetizers he couldn't pronounce. He reached for a toothpick, skewering something that resembled meat, then hesitated and took a cracker instead. "You're not from around here, are you?" A voice sneered. He turned. A man, maybe mid-30s, crisp blazer, drink in hand, wore a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Excuse me." "Relax, just making conversation," the man said. "Sienna tends to bring home projects." Jalen's jaw tightened. "She didn't bring home anything," the man chuckled. "Easy. I'm just saying she's known for picking up lost causes, dogs, startups, strangers." Before Jalen could respond, a quiet voice interrupted. "Is there a problem here? Sienna?" The man straightened. "No problem. Just chatting with your friend here." Sienna's eyes locked on him, ice behind the smile. "Then find someone else to chat with." The man walked away, muttering into his drink. Jalen turned to her. "That's what this is to them. A show, a charity case." She looked embarrassed. "He's a jerk." "Yeah, but he's not the only one staring. They don't matter. They matter to you," he said quietly. "And I don't." She didn't answer. He stepped away from her, out through the side door onto the terrace. The night air hit him like a confession. He leaned on the railing, looking out over miles of darkness dotted with distant lights. A few seconds later she followed. "I didn't think it would be like this," she said. He didn't look at her. "Didn't think I'd be on display." "I wanted you here." "Yeah. Or did you want to feel better about yourself?" That hurt. She said nothing. He finally turned. His voice was steady, but low. "I'm not angry that you're rich. I'm angry that you thought bringing me here would make anything easier for either of us." "You think I don't see it too?" she snapped. "The way they look at me since I left the company. Like I'm broken. Like I lost my edge. And yeah, maybe I brought you here because I wanted them to see something good I found outside their world." He stared at her. "Turns out," she said bitterly, "you don't want to be seen either." Silence, heavy and real. Then he said softer, "I've spent my life blending in so I wouldn't get hurt." She stepped closer. "I'm not here to hurt you, Jalen." Then, "Don't parade me?" That landed. They stood inches apart now. No music, no voices, just the hum of a landscape they both suddenly felt alien to. He glanced away. "You don't know what it's like walking into a room and waiting to be called the mistake," she exhaled. "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to stand in one and not know who I am anymore." For a moment the distance between them didn't feel like money or race or history. Just two people trying not to drown. He looked at her again. "I should go." She nodded, eyes glassy. "Okay." He stepped past her, paused, then without turning, "It wasn't the food. I came for you." And he walked into the night. The afternoon sun beat down on the gravel lot outside Thompson Hardware, where the smell of cut lumber and machine oil hung thick in the air. Jalen stood under the shade of a half-assembled shed, hands deep in a abaidi box of bolts, pretending not to hear the car that rolled up behind him. He knew the engine by now. Smooth, precise, foreign. Sienna stepped out, trading heels for low boots, her hair tied back, her face flushed but not from the heat. Jalen didn't look up. "You lost again?" "I was in the area. You rich folks are always in the area when you want something," he said, tone dry, but not cruel. She took a few slow steps closer, stopping just short of the tools spread across the workbench. "I'm not here for a fight." "Good," he muttered. "I'm tired of those." I wanted to say I'm sorry. That caught him. He glanced sideways. "For what?" "For thinking I'd enjoy being a curiosity in your world." "For putting you there," she said. "And for not stopping that night when you clearly wanted to leave." Jalen sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. "It wasn't about leaving. It was about being seen the wrong way." Sienna looked around. The dust, the wood, the open sky. It was a world far from Carrington estates and curated guest lists. "I brought you into my space," she said, "but I never gave you room to breathe." He finally looked at her. "Why do you care so much?" Her voice cracked just slightly. "Because you're the first person in years who looked at me without expectation or judgment. You just saw me." That silenced him. "And when I lost everything that made people return my calls, when I couldn't walk into my own boardroom without whispers," she continued, "you were the one who reminded me I still had worth." Jalen folded his arms, guarded. "So now I'm your emotional crutch?" "No," she said. "You're my mirror. The one thing in my life that's been honest." A breeze stirred the dust around their feet. Somewhere behind them, a table saw word to life. She reached into her bag, pulled out the notebook she'd once shown him. It was worn now, creased at the corners, full of new pages. "I kept working on it. The community workshop idea, mentorship, vocational training. It's not a pitch. It's real." He took it, thumbed through the pages in silence. "You don't have to say yes," she added, "but I want you to know I meant every word." Jalen closed the notebook slowly. "Why me?" She smiled, eyes wet but steady. "Because you don't need to be rich to be extraordinary." For the first time since the night on the terrace, he let himself really look at her. Beyond the wealth, beyond the chaos she came from. Just her. He nodded once. "All right, I'll help you build it," he said. "But on one condition." "What?" "You stop apologizing for loving something real." Sienna blinked, then laughed. Soft, grateful. "Deal!" Later that week they sat across from each other on the tailgate of an old pickup parked at the edge of the lot, plans spread between them, coffee in hand, dusk sinking into the mountains. Jalen pointed at one of the blueprints. "You drew this electrical setup backwards." Sienna frowned. "No, I didn't." He raised an eyebrow. She sighed. "Fine, maybe I did." He smirked. "You're lucky I'm patient." "I'm lucky for a lot of things lately." She sipped her coffee, eyes on the horizon. "They're going to come after me again, you know. The board, the press. They think this is a vanity project." "It's not." "They'll say I'm throwing money at a boy I barely know." Jalen shrugged. "Then let them say it." She looked at him. "You're not afraid. I've been underestimated my whole life. It doesn't scare me anymore, but it does fuel me." Silence again. But this time it wasn't tense. It was sturdy, like something building. Then he added, almost casually, "You're not the only one who lost something." She turned toward him. "I lost faith a long time ago," he said. "In people, in fairness, in second chances. But you showing up, every time, that started something." Her voice softened. "What did it start?" He looked at her, really looked at her. "Hope." The Denver Civic Convention Center shimmered under the late spring sun, its glass panels gleaming like armor. Inside, rows of seats filled with tech investors, media personalities, and startup darlings buzzed with anticipation. A massive LED screen behind the stage pulsed with logos from sponsors and a scrolling agenda of the afternoon's panel speakers. Sienna stood in the wings, microphone clipped, palms damp. "You don't have to do this," her assistant whispered. "Yes, I do," she said, voice firm. "They need to see it, all of it." She adjusted her blazer, matte black, sharply cut, and stepped forward. As her name was announced to polite applause, "Please welcome Sienna Taylor, founder of Elevate Tech and former CEO of Carrington Green." Jalen watched from the back row, his posture rigid beneath a borrowed blazer. His work boots didn't match the suits around him, but he didn't care. He was here because she'd asked him to be. No, because he wanted to be. He knew what today meant. He knew the vultures were waiting. Sienna approached the podium slowly. Lights blinded her momentarily, but she didn't flinch. She looked across the sea of faces, then down at her notes. She didn't read them. "I'm not here to talk about market projections," she began, "or IPOs, or exit strategies." A murmur of confusion rippled across the audience. "I'm here to talk about what happens when we lose sight of people in pursuit of profit, when we trade integrity for influence, when we silence the voices that don't wear suits." Now the murmurs turned sharp. "You all know I left Carrington Green. What you don't know is why." Behind her, the screen flickered. A photo appeared, not of spreadsheets or solar panels, but of a tool-strewn workbench of hands gripping wood, of a young man showing children how to build something from scratch. "I left because the people I worked with stopped listening. They stopped believing that innovation comes from unexpected places." She took a breath. "Last month I brought a young man, Jalen Brooks, to one of my industry events. You probably read the articles, the comments, the assumptions." A long pause. Her throat tightened, but she pushed through. "What none of you saw was what I saw. A builder, a teacher, a man with more wisdom than some of the executives I sat beside for 10 years. She looked toward the crowd, toward Jalen, even if she couldn't see his face. "I love him." The room went silent. Not shocked, stunned. "And if that costs me your funding, your respect, or your invitation to next year's keynote, so be it." Gasps, phones raised, the silence burst like glass. She smiled just barely. "Because I'd rather build something honest with him than keep pretending with any of you." Then she walked off stage. Backstage, her assistant looked pale. "Sienna, the press, let them write," she said, pulling the mic off. "I gave them something worth writing." A few feet behind her, Jalen stood frozen in the hallway, having made his way there as soon as the speech ended. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "You could lose everything." She walked toward him. "Then let me lose it with intention." He looked at her, eyes heavy but alive. "You meant it?" he asked. "All of it?" She stepped closer. Every word. They stood inches apart in the hallway in the storm. "Then I'm staying," he said. A beat passed. Then her voice soft, cracking. "Good." That night the internet burned, headlines like fire. Sienna Taylor declares love for unknown builder at tech summit. CEO walks away from fortune for man with dirt under his nails. The backlash came fast. Investors pulled out of her community project. Former board members issued statements distancing themselves. But something else happened too. Letters came, emails, handwritten notes from teachers, veterans, welders, grandmothers, stories of people who were seen, truly seen for the first time in years. And among them, one letter stood out. It was from a 12-year-old girl in Detroit. "My brother says I can't build things because I'm a girl, but you showed them on that stage. You built something brave." Sienna read the note aloud to Jalen under a sky full of stars, sitting on the porch of the new workshop they were building together. He leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. "She gets it," he said. Sienna nodded. "Yeah, she does." He turned to her. "You know, you didn't just break their silence." "What do you mean?" "You broke mine." 1 year later, the morning sun stretched long across the gravel driveway of the newly completed workshop just outside Grand Junction, Colorado. Where an abandoned warehouse once stood, now rose a beautiful, clean-lined structure clad in pine wood and corrugated steel. Its large front windows were etched with the words, "Brooks & Taylor Institute, Skills, Dignity, Future." Inside, the scent of sawdust and fresh paint mingled with the aroma of brewed coffee and cinnamon rolls donated by a local bakery. Rows of benches lined the workshop where young men and women, black, white, Latino, Navajo, laughed, drilled, measured, built. Jalen stood at the head of the room wearing jeans, a dark blue shirt, and an apron streaked with chalk. He leaned over a table, demonstrating how to cut a dovetail joint with precision. Every student watched him, not with obligation, but with admiration. He no longer felt out of place in front of a crowd. He was home. Sienna stood by the entrance, greeting community leaders, donors, and old friends. She looked different. Not in wealth or status, but in presence. Grounded. Clear. The phone in her purse buzzed every few minutes with missed calls and press requests, but she didn't glance at it once. Outside, guests gathered around a podium, framed by 2 American flags and a backdrop of young trees planted the previous spring. Jalen stepped up to the mic, adjusting it carefully, his hands surprisingly steady. He looked out at the faces, familiar and new, and exhaled. "I used to believe that some people were just born to stay small," he began. "That no matter how good you were, how hard you worked, there were places you'd never be invited into." He paused. "And then I met someone who didn't invite me in. She walked out the door herself, sat beside me, and listened." Sienna's eyes shone. Several people dabbed tears. "She didn't hand me a ladder. She handed me tools," he said. "And together we built something bigger than either of us." He nodded toward the building behind him. "This place isn't just for kids who want to learn how to build a table. It's for anyone who's been told they don't belong. It's for the ones who fix things quietly, who don't wear suits, who know the value of calloused hands." He smiled, voice low but resonant. "It's for the ones like me." Applause erupted, but he didn't move. He let the moment breathe. Then he added, with that signature pause of his, "We named it Brooks & Taylor, but the truth is this house doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the future. Later that afternoon, when the crowd had thinned and the sun dipped low, Jalen and Sienna sat side by side on the back steps of the building, watching a few kids chase each other across the field behind them. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You nailed it." "I didn't stutter," he teased. "Nope. You just turned every grown man into a puddle." He laughed, but there was something deeper in the sound, something healed. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The old world?" Sienna shook her head. "Not for a second. I didn't lose power. I just found a better way to use it." He nodded. "You remember what you said to me a year ago after that conference?" "Which part?" "That loving something real was worth losing everything else?" She looked up at him. "Yeah." He held up her hand, kissed her knuckles. "You were right." That evening, as dusk softened the edges of the sky, the workshop glowed from within, light spilling from its tall windows, laughter echoing from inside, the clatter of hammers and dreams. An old pickup pulled up slowly along the side of the road. Mrs. Temple, the retired school librarian, rolled down her window and looked out with misty eyes. She'd lived in this town her whole life. They'd turned a scrapyard into a sanctuary, she whispered to herself. She wasn't wrong. Inside, Jalen helped a student line up a drill. "Easy pressure. Let the tool do the work." The boy looked up. "You ever get scared?" Jalen smiled. "All the time." "So how do you know you're doing the right thing?" He thought for a second, then said, "When it feels like you're building something bigger than yourself, and it scares you just enough to mean something. That's how." The bell above the workshop door jingled. Sienna walked in holding a small framed photo. She handed it to Jalen. Inside the frame was a picture of him taken from behind, teaching a class. On the frame, in careful script, were the words, "Love builds." He looked at it, then at her. "Where do we hang it?" She smiled. "At the heart."